Today we're going to be looking at everything wrong with the Durston X-Dome tent. Don't get me wrong, I love this tent and I used it on my recent 10-day Wabakimi wilderness canoe trip in the Canadian backcountry. This tent has a very clever design with some unique ideas and it's a really important part of my kit. But after spending some time with it, I found a few issues that you need to know before buying it. Now I know that Dan and the team at Durston are always innovating, so I hope this list is useful to help them drive the direction of this tent. Before we even get set up, I want to talk about the poles. And inside this pole pack, there are some extremely sharp, very big Y branches that are used as part of the poles. And the shape of these mean that it's very difficult to actually pack the poles in with the tent or to store the poles inside your kit. I think a much better design would be to have metal clasps on the end of these poles, and then they could slot into holes inside slightly larger circular rings. They just don't feel like they're part of the overall design ethos where everything else is so sleek and well thought through, and then you've got these sticky out bits. But these poles are starting to, I want to use the word fray. I can see micro cracks forming along these joints, obviously from where they've been slid together. So my next issue concerns these spreader bars, which are very tight. Now I have tried with this pole structure on the top and on the bottom, and it's very tight in both cases. It just feels like that this is a point of weakness for the tent. It's going to rip, it's going to break at one of these points because you really have to yank it to get them in. Just a few millimeters of extra thickness or of extra width here, or less width in the actual poles themselves is going to make that significantly easier. During the setup of the tent, I didn't record this setup intending to show you, but it did demonstrate another problem, which is as you're setting it up, occasionally one of the pole ends pops out where you've already attached it, and you have to go around and do it again. Now I'm very aware there's been feedback from the early versions of this tent of people complaining that the pole clips in the feet are too difficult to get in and to get out, and they've made them slightly easier, and now of course they fall out. Sometimes you just can't win, can you? Next, there are no guy lines supplied with the tent. For a tent in this price range, that seems quite surprising to me. Guy lines are essential for stability in windy conditions, and this tent markets itself on storm worthiness. It means you have to buy your own as soon as you get it, as you can see I've done with these 1980s high-vis styly acid house guy lines. Now let's take a look inside the tent at one of the things that I found quite irritating when I first got it, namely the fact that the inner is very loose and baggy when it's attached correctly to the outer. Look at how baggy. This string here that goes along here, which pulls the inner to that corner, I actually had to tighten that on arrival because it was incredibly loose. I've had to add an extra knot or two into it in order to tighten it. It just suggests there's something wrong either with the QC processes for these tents when they're released. I don't know whether other tents suffer from this same problem, or perhaps it's just a design problem, but it just seems very odd that it would be so baggy when it's such a simple fix. Now I also have the optional footprint. I've got that in order to protect the tent base because the actual ground sheet seems like a very thin material. But the optional footprint itself somehow isn't the same size as the inner. Have a look. You can see it doesn't cover the majority, and it itself is very baggy. The wide end seems perfectly adequately fitted, but the narrow, I must have this on wrong. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, the idiot's put it on wrong. He's put it on upside down. So I've just flipped it around thinking maybe I have to have done that because it's so ridiculously wrong, then surely there must be something wrong. And as it's an asymmetric design, then maybe that would explain the problem. But no, we still have the same problem. A very baggy inner, a weirdly baggy footprint. I can think of no reason why that shouldn't be tight. You can see I've got the logo facing up, which I assume is the right way. There is a question over where these attachments go, but I can't think they would go anywhere other than here. Next, we need to look at the floor material itself. Now, I know and I understand that this is a lightweight tent, and that means some compromises need to be made with some of the strength of the materials. But the tent floor feels very weak. That's why I bought the ground sheet. That also feels very thin, but fine, there's 2 thin layers. But the tent floor itself, I'm pretty sure that's going to rip very, very easily when it comes into contact with something sharp like some brambles or equivalent. So now I want you to imagine you've got yourself into camp, you've got set up, you've looked at the skies, they're crystal clear blue skies. You've checked the forecast, 0% chance of rain all night, and you think, I know what I want to do. I want to set the tent up in Stargazer mode. Immediately, you have problems. The main issue that we've got is to convert this tent into Stargazer mode is more work than putting it up in the first place, because the poles are on the outside of the outer and the inner is clipped into the outer. The first thing we've got to do is unclip the entire inner from the outer, then we can remove the outer, then we can put the tent up in Stargazer mode. It is quite a faff in order to do it, and I hope you enjoy watching me do this in time-lapse mode. This pole, it's definitely easy for somebody to trip up on. Very easy to miss it if you're actually using this in Stargazer mode. So, full disclosure, we are now the next day. And for the final issue, we're going to talk about the inner and the outer touching and condensation coming into the tent. Now, I wasn't going to include this issue. I had seen it on other YouTubers' videos when they were looking at issues and problems with the tent, but I'd not had this as a problem, so I decided not to include it when I first filmed the video. However, having spent a night in it last night, for some reason, I've got the issue. I suspect maybe I've always had the issue, but I'm in a higher humidity environment. It's very, very wet in the woods today. So perhaps that is the reason for getting it. But let's take a quick look. So you can see on my sleeping bag, we have a wet patch. Now, this comes, I don't know whether this comes out on the camera, but this morning when I woke up, the inner and the outer were stuck together. I also had the issue at the foot end. You may be able to see that this is wetter, and these two were touching because my feet were pushed backwards. Because of the lay of the land, I had my head up at the thin end. Maybe that is part of the issue. There are a couple of things that I would do to fix for this. First of all, next time I feel like I'm in a high humidity environment and I'm likely to have the issue, I'm going to make sure that I pull my bedding away from that outer edge. Secondly, I'm going to try and make sure I've got my head at the wide end rather than at the thin end. I think having my head at the thin end may have caused a small problem. There is a slight incline and maybe that has slid me down and into the end, which is why my foot box got slightly wet. It's also worth adding I received this tent in July 2025, and I'm aware that there were other manufacturing issues in earlier versions of this tent, especially with the pole inserts. I've had none of these issues and consider them fixed in the version that I received, although I have got that frame. I've done 2 of these everything wrong videos. I've also got one on the Amok Drama hammock, so check that out if you're interested. I only conduct this sort of in-depth video when it's on a product that I know very well. And all of these products and every product that I've covered on my channel, I bought with my own money, so I'm not remotely influenced. So that's my list. Everything wrong with the Durston X-Dome. Guy ropes, tight poles, sharp connectors, inners, impractical Stargazer mode. Nothing changes the fact that this is an innovative tent and without doubt one of the best tents in the market. But these are a few issues you should be aware of before deciding if it's right for you. So what do you think? Do you think these problems put you off, or are they easy workarounds for an otherwise smart design? Let me know in the comments if I've missed anything off. And don't forget to subscribe for more honest gear reviews and backcountry adventures. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.